Oh my goodness. We are 30 seconds late. If you are just jumping on, uh, excellent. Thank you for being here. I got to throw up a few screens. If you are watching this after the fact on YouTube or you're watching it after the fact on Facebook, you can scrub through for 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then you'll get to the very first story. Bum, 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 bum. And then we can turn that off. Do I have glasses? The ones I want. Boom, boom, boom. Hello. Matt, unfortunately, can't be here today. He's feeling under the weather. So if you are the type who prays, send him a loving thought. And if you aren't, like Noah, just send some good thoughts his way. So Facebook. Where are we? Twitch. I am gonna be running. Everybody is waving at me, and everybody's here. Oh, we're just waiting on one. I am gonna be running. Everybody is waving at me, and everybody's here. Oh, we're just waiting on one. I do not know where I'm hearing the double from.
Me.
Okay. In that case, we're all set up. One last thing to check. Where are we? Facebook. I'm gonna go ahead and share the Facebook link once it goes out. There we go. Okay, so welcome to everybody out there in the Twitch universe and who's watching us on Facebook. We are going to, I am Daniel Andrew Boyd. This is the Workshop, and usually Mac intros the show. But if you missed it, he's not feeling well, so he's not going to be here today. And I am, you would think, because we go back and forth every week, I would just have it down. What do I need to tell you? I need to tell you that Story Luck is a not-for-profit, one, and about this workshop show. We all come here to help people work on their stories and to show the audience what process looks like for these various different people. We're gonna do the stories multiple times to see how our feedback hits, if it's good or if it's not so good, and we'll get a path going forward on these stories. And the way it's gonna work today is we're gonna start with Danette's story, and we're gonna do a little bit of feedback. And then I will go into a 15 to 20 minute lesson. And then we'll have Miss Mark do her story a second time and see how it feels. And then we'll go into the next person's story. And right before that, Susan's going to be our second feature today. And right before that, we are going to do an opening question, and I'm going to check and see. Noah, do you remember what Mac's opening question was? I'm going to, he's looking it up. Susan knows. Go ahead, Susan.
I was inspired is the opening question. So I was inspired to get my dog Sasha when my renter said he wanted a German Shepherd.
Oh, right. And did you end up getting a German Shepherd?
Well, she was supposed to be a German Shepherd Lab mix, but she turns out to be almost half pit bull, then 12% German Shepherd, and like 12% Rottweiler, and then 12% Akita, and then 7% mix of Collie and Chow Chow.
So I'm assuming you did the Geo thing.
Embark,
That,
yeah. Embark's
yeah.
DNA. So
I don't care that much.
she has a little bit of German Shepherd.
All right.
Not that much.
What sort of things inspired you?
Oh, me. Well, actually, you. I was inspired to do and fuck up the social media for this lovely show and join when I saw how passionate you was when we were at your place setting it up. So yeah.
Well, I think you do an awesome job. TJ is our moderator, and he'll be helping you out in chat. For those of you who are in there right now, let me look. Do we have? Hey, Kristen. Bum bum bum. Nina is there. Time Travel Plus. So, what is your answer? Time plus travel. Do you have it?
You did it too.
Right. Do you know off the top of your head what do you call? What is it? Hey, waving at the Lotus. Noah, throwing it to you while people in chat come up with the things that missed the chat. The chat. TJ's got you.
All right. What inspires me? Basic survival, of course. That's really motivating. And other than basic survival, just senseless, impractical, happy horseshit. Just doing stupid things that are difficult for no reason.
Oh, yeah. Do you know, I'm looking into, the guy who did the glitter box?
Yeah.
I think I've said this to you out loud. He does a 30-day class.
Oh, yeah?
And I want to get it for you so bad. He walks you through 3 things, and it's like apparently very personal.
Oh.
Kay's here. Hi, Kay.
Hi.
I'm going to throw you on the spot immediately. The question is, what happy thing, song, music, otherwise, inspires you?
The happy thing that inspires me, song, music, or otherwise, I really like when I see celebrities crying.
Oh, I love this.
I mean, no, seriously, like hopefully it's a happy thing for them, but like that moment where you just feel like somebody is really in their own zone and they're feeling something that is undeniable and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, they could just be very well rehearsed, but it doesn't feel well rehearsed. I'm like, that's nice.
Let me highlight this. I didn't think that's where that was going. In my
You
head,
thought it was mean?
because I always wanted to see this person, Cat Power. She does these really sad songs and she cries at like every concert. And I was like, I want to see her break down and cry. And then tickets always sold out. And I was like waiting outside and I was all dejected and upset. And then when everybody came out after the concert, they were like, it was horrible. She broke down in tears and like couldn't do half her songs. And I was like, no, that's the shtick. That's what I wanted. But when I moved to Chicago, I wasn't with her. I'm going to screw up who it was. But I saw a rapper and someone screamed, fuck yeah. But he heard fuck you. and he got very upset and he just stopped playing and he's like, oh no, fuck all you all, and then he like stormed off stage. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
that's what I've been looking for my whole life.
Oh no.
Yeah. Do you have an answer for us?
For what happy thing inspires me? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. What happy thing inspires me is, I guess, watching people live their truth. And then being brave people. They make you want to be more brave and tell your truth. I like truth.
Yeah.
They like to avoid it, but I enjoy someone says, not only like says their truth, but lives it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm gay, and then I'm out of the closet, and then here I am. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Or I really am a Republican, or whatever.
Yeah, it could be either way, right?
As long as they're truth, like what are they really truly doing? And then when they're saying that, doesn't matter where they are in life, just inspiring to say this is where they are and they're living it. And I love it. That's the nice thing. The warm feelings come from that.
Yeah, I think that is that's sort of one of my things that I think that is good about the millennial and the Z generation, that they are very open.
I fucking love them. So much.
that I think that before, the boomers and the Gen Xers were way more into facade a little bit and like keeping status quo, and like you couldn't be into this even if you really were. You wouldn't tell people. And I feel like we're moving closer and closer to like, yeah, I think this is cool and I'm fine with saying it. I like that.
Really quick, I have a couple things.
Yes.
So first, Time Plus Travel says, hello, Mac. Also, I want to thank you for the 3 individuals who started following us. I'm going to butcher all of these. So we got Mac Divot, fuck you. Thank you. Danette 614. I invert numbers sometimes, so I got that right. I'm happy. Christine M. Fuck, I'm slaughtering this. Excuse my language. Thank you for the follow. And if you haven't already, please do follow us. We're trying to get to 50 followers by the end of March. So please help us achieve our goal. It looks like we only got 2 more to go based on these. So, yay! That's it. That's all I got.
All right. So a small little segue, and then we're going to go into Danette's first story. And then I'm going to mute you. Yeah, so the transition is just to say thank you, everybody, for showing up. There's a million things you can do right now. There's thousands of movies on Netflix that you could be watching. People spent billions of dollars to create Star Wars. You could be doing that. The sun is out in Chicago. You could be out on a run, but you chose to be here with us, and it's not lost on us. So thank you so much for hanging out and talking stories and helping us make them better today. And with that, just hit us with your story whenever you're ready.
Okay. It's a deep one. The title of this story is called Forgiveness Culture. So it's a lot of personal stuff here I'm going to share. Okay. As a recovering addict to love, alcohol, approval, sex, just to name a few of my addictions, and also as a recovering codependent, and I'm also an empath, I sought out a plethora of resources and external sources to help me stay in alignment with my healing and growth, to stay strong and away from the isolation of addiction. Yes, I was in therapy. Yes, I was opening to human connection, but I also wanted to get some YouTube help. I wanted to connect with content creators who had experienced the same struggles as I have with addiction and relationships. Sharing stories, as you all know, helps us to heal. It connects us to the same struggle and moves us forward, at least somewhat, depending on the intent of the individuals sharing. So I dove into this YouTube help, which ultimately gave me something unexpected. a realization that the collective matters in our individual culture, our individualistic culture. It's our universal attitude and behaviors and beliefs that we unconsciously live in that has the greatest impact on all of us. It's the weight that holds us down. That through this experience of chasing creators to assist me in the art of self-healing, I came out with a new revelation of truth. We impact one another subconsciously. We are all living in a story that doesn't serve us. We are a condemnation culture, a product of fear and lies. No matter how hard we work on ourselves, if we can't come together, we can't and won't thrive. I learned this by detecting a pattern in all of the YouTubers I've seen. If we don't see our own story, we can't evolve it. So anyway, it didn't start that way. I was open and curious to seeing what others had to say. I found these online self-proclaimed life coaches who share their stories and sell their content and services to help others and also to help themselves to an income. Nothing wrong with that, just some facts. The first YouTuber I found was this, for the lack of a better term, hippie, who goes by the name of Peace and Harmony. She's by far my favorite. Very loving, open. She wears that teal blue jewelry and has a Follow Your Heart poster as a backdrop. She helped me in the first stages of my recovery, becoming aware of my problem, my naivety, my truth. But mainly, she informed me of the truth that there are ill-intentioned people, that there are what they call the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, cluster B personality disordered people among us. And as an empath, I attract them all. Yes, they do exist, she said. And yes, they don't have the ability to care. Her goal was to create a space of awareness of what is, to guide people back to the spiritual space of I am, to get our power, to get us in our power, to move forward without, to show us a new life is possible outside of the subjugation we surrender to. I was in an awakening, but I still felt like something was missing. Something I wouldn't put my finger on until years later. Once I got what I needed from my hippie, happy soul friend, I graduated towards others who had a more practical healing approach. I moved towards others who experienced relationships and wrote books about their personal experiences with people that were narcissistic and psychopathic. Peace and Harmony just knew of but never experienced them. So I found these two women at the same time, and the parallel ideas and content for healing. Lisa Aramano and Meredith, someone who went by the name of Inner Integration, is practical. So I went down the road of practicality. They expressed the importance of coming into self and going to depth about the damage that can occur when you're with these types of people. I enjoyed their stories. I admired their courage, and I employed their techniques. Although they did mention the idea of cultural programmings, that wasn't their main focus. The focus seemingly always seems to come back to the responsibility of the individual in all of these people. That we need to first be strong alone. That we are the main reason why we fail. It left me with a proud feeling of taking responsibility and not much more. Although I felt better, I still felt as if I was sitting in the same space. Something was missing. After these two ladies, I took a long break. I had hit a wall and wasn't moving. I felt frozen and alone. I think it was because the theme that danced along all of this self-help advice was the condemnation of the abusers, the separation between us and them. Zero contact forever, they'd say. Banish them from your life, existence. Get them out of here. Although at a time and place, this separation did serve me. It did serve me. It did give me a cutoff from the abuse. It gave me space to heal. Condemnation actually can and does serve us, but only up until a point. If we stew in it too long, we become bitter towards the ones that hurt us, resentful and angry. And that was it. It was on a personal and individual level, letting go of condemnation and moving forward towards a deeper level of forgiveness got me to be free. Yes, it starts with the individual, but it shouldn't stop there. In all of the YouTube creators, I saw that it did stop there. That you forgive, it frees you, the end. Now you can be more fulfilled, but they weren't fulfilled. They were forgiving with resentment, which isn't real forgiveness. I learned this without them, but with the observation of a hidden theme within them, within us all. After this year off of the YouTube gurus and focus on psychotherapy and zero contact, I went back to contact with all of my suspected abusers. My new pain that stemmed from the old. I forgave them, I stayed in contact, and now I'm holding the space for them. The space for them to someday change, if that impossible change is going to happen. I went back into contact with these YouTubers. I found a so-called crappy childhood fairy. Another one of these YouTubers. She's all about, again, protect yourself, self-care, self-love, personal responsibility. And I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped back and I dug a little deeper. I came across this video where she was insulting spirituality, saying it doesn't matter as much as healing is logical interpretation, saying that going deeper within is an illusion, saying that minimizing the spirituality and the power that it can bring in your healing, minimizing the idea of human connectedness. So this, to me, to make a point that some abusers spiritually, she did this sometimes. She did this to make a point that some abusers use spirituality as a means to deceive, but she didn't swing back. She didn't swing back around and defend it enough. She didn't state the importance of connection and human connection and spirituality. So I went back to their comments to dig a little further and to see what the subscribers thought of her message. And there it was, the missing link, a comment that I've been waiting for to clue me in. The comment that suggested we are a condemnation culture, a culture that gates off all whom which we perceive to be harmful. Our refusal to be an all-inclusive, universal one. The denial of our unity, good, bad, doesn't exist, but in our minds. That as long as we deny one, we deny all. It was through this comment that I reflected. I thought back to all of the pain I could hear in the voices of all of these YouTubers. They just don't know. They're truly not forgiving. I thought, they're stuck in this culture, in our condemnation, collectively. I realized that we are a product of our broken whole. That we've surrendered our power to the dominant few who stand to gain the most from our lack of awareness and willingness to change. That we have in fear and we live in fear and condemnation, so that we can live in the comfort of life, in the comfort of the ignoring, the inconvenient truth that would require us to move, work, to find a way to exist together in a deeper way. The fear of change, the fear of unknown, I know it, but I've had enough. I want change. So for now, I want to be the change I need to see by showing up with the courage and strength to share these real stories. Forgiveness has a collective purpose, and that purpose is to open to real change, to allow for love-based action to get off the ground and soar with the height of universal acceptance. And to me, we are already there. I lay it out as if it's already done. We are already there. To me, when our culture introduces itself, it says, "Hi, my name is forgiveness culture." Okay, that's it. Is that too long?
You are at 10 minutes.
Okay.
So our first question that we do here is let me highlight you. Is always how do you feel after reading it? Did it feel like it was too long for you?
It felt like I didn't have really a chance to absorb it enough to share it. So I kind of wrote it. It's like the third rewrite. And so I didn't feel like I felt like I was too self-conscious and not familiar enough with the story. Like I didn't rehearse it. So I didn't really, or read it over for the final time, or read it over. I didn't read it over. So I felt like I didn't really have time to absorb it into myself and my being before I spoke it. So I was a little bit feeling like I just wasn't too familiar enough with my own work to make
Right.
it, to really feel it and deliver it the way I'd like to. But yeah, it was okay. I mean, I felt like it has some good points, but I don't know if it's definitely not done.
Yeah. It definitely felt like you had done drafts of it. It didn't feel like, like super raw.
Right.
Let's talk about some things. I think first, right off the bat, I'm super interested in this topic. I talk in my stuff a lot that I am super into entrepreneurs, which is like a side hustle of what you're talking about, or like a greater thing, right? These self-help people who are like, you can do it, you can do your own business, and they sort of talk in this language that sort of makes sense and sort of doesn't, but they'll talk for an hour and they'll have like 2 or 3 nuggets where you're like, this is brilliant, this changes everything. And so I find that stuff super fun. So to hear that there is this version of that's, if I caught this correctly, that is all about dealing with toxic people in your life.
Yes.
And how to cut them out.
Right. These are people that have experienced cluster B personality people and want to inform people about them, and also give kind of these ways you can they set up these little their own they're like what do you call it? Coaches, life coaches that kind of put you into a plan or program or techniques to heal. They kind of they guide you along into like a structured process of healing, I guess, if you want to say it.
Yeah. So questions that I have in your going down this rabbit hole, it sounded like you were regularly interacting with this community for like a year. Is that?
Yeah, basically, yeah, for 1 year.
Yeah. Now, did you pay for their programs or did you just consume the free content that they were putting out?
I consumed mostly the free, but I did pay for some of the content, like some books and some videos and things that they put out just for their private community.
Yeah,
I did mostly the free, but then I did see if they had a way to, I read some of the books are like practical ways to heal, the steps and stages. And then I didn't only mention a few, but most of them I just kind of absorbed their free content and their talks, mostly. And I would be hearing like there's all this, they had a lot of pain, it bothered me. Like deep inside, I would hear them still be kind of angry at their abusers,
Yeah.
Even though it was masked over with all this wisdom, there was still that feeling that they weren't truly or forgiving.
Yeah. So I think that is a very cool thing to just notice and acknowledge. And I think that is very worth sharing. So I'm going to open it up. I have a couple more content things, but I want to see just people's initial impressions. Is there stuff that they really liked? Susan, I'll go to you and then Kay.
Yeah, I thought the message was really, really good and enlightening because, you do hear that a lot, just almost sort of victim blaming, well, you let them into your life, keep them out of your life. Why do you keep interacting with them? And then, some of these people, their family or whatever, they're in your life. So here, there's another version of, hey, there is a way to kind of forgive them and still keep your own sense of well-being and who you are. That's an awesome message to be, giving out to the world. And I really appreciate your story, and I thank you so much for telling it.
I totally agree with what Susan just said, that I enjoyed the content, and I liked that you brought us through an arc for me of seeking out this information, knowing that you're an empath, knowing that you're a person who feels very deeply, and then, feeling like, okay, I'm coming across these folks who The fact that I'm feeling very deeply and they're making me feel really bad is a problem. How do I solve this problem? And then you get to the point where you realize, okay, the help that I've been receiving is like, I need to go beyond that. It's not necessarily the help that I was looking for if it's causing me to throw people away like they're disposable. So I appreciated that. And I can personally connect to that. I used to call myself an empath, and I'm not sure that I call myself an empath now. But I used to find myself thinking thoughts that I was like, that's not my thought. And I would sort of scan the room for who was around me. And I'd be like, I bet you it's their thought. And having a conversation with them, I was usually right. So I'm like, okay. I think that you hit the nail on the head about when you were talking about your telling of it and how you felt, that you didn't feel like you had embodied the story yet. And I would say, go with that thought in the retelling. If we're able to go through a retelling today, I would love to see you scan ahead to the next sentence, think about how you feel about that, and then put that emotion into what you're saying to us, because it is a story about emotions. It's a story about your connections with people, even toxic people, and how you decided to go about healing yourself without having to cut yourself off from people. So it might be harder to tell the story when you put your emotion in it like that, but I think it would bolster what you're already doing, which is great content.
No, thank you.
Going off that a little bit, there is a ton of unique language that I think people aren't going to know. Empath is one of them. And so there's a question of how do you want to handle that? Do you want to use simpler language? Do you want to have it be kind of TED Talky where you're explaining this stuff and walking people through it? One of the lines was "Guide to I Am." One of the women were
the hippie
used that. That is completely that one threw me. I don't have a guess as to what that means. And there were two or three that were sort of like that, where I was like, I can't even fathom, because I'm not into that culture. And I don't know off the bat how you fix that confusion. Do you have a thought right now for where you would place this? Is this something that you want to have on your channel? Is it something that you're going to do on your podcast? Do you have anything, or is it just working it out because it's stuff you're working on?
I think the purpose of this story was to share my growth with people. Like I'm on a path to growth, so maybe I would have a little more of an introduction to the type of person I am without, you said, using that language, or maybe kind of like, instead of, I can either define things, or I can put it in simpler terms, or maybe I can sort of define it really briefly. But I guess what I would want to do is see if what I was saying, all the things I wrote here are important to the story, and make it more story-ish instead of just like all the, just explaining how I kind of want to, like, this story probably needs to be, it can be pulled open a little bit, I think, and then I need to open it up a little bit more and see, like you said, my emotions, what they are behind it all, and what I want to share, what the message is. Is the story about the message? Is it about, the growth? Like, be more clear to myself what I'm trying to convey. Like, 'cause I'm kind of like, I want to share my experiences, but there's so much there. I'm trying to cram it all into one little.
Yeah.
This is and that. I just picked a few of the things, but this is a whole long journey. I've been on this journey of self-healing, God, for like 10 years. And This is probably the most significant as of lately, because, all these realizations, my naivete. So I guess maybe it's about, because I became someone who's not naive. And then empath, I don't really, she was saying, one of the ladies that was speaking was saying about empath. I don't know if I really define myself as an empath either. It's just, that's just the people who feel really strongly I guess I'm just a person who feels emotions strongly and feels other people's emotions around me. I read into people's feelings more than their
Yeah.
thoughts, their feelings. Like I can feel someone's mood and I know what they need. So like if someone's like in a bad mood, a cashier could be like in a really bad mood. I'll just show up knowing that because I can feel her, and I'll go and say, hey, and make her day better. That's what I do. When I do feel people, and I'm a positive. I focus on the positive things in life, and I certainly enjoy making people's day better. So I don't know how I define myself. So I guess I don't know. I guess I haven't really thought about it.
Yeah. So there's sort of a clear change in you from the beginning to the end, which is good in story. One of the things that you threw out is that you've already truncated. This is an epic journey. So I think that I could imagine a space for this where it's a series, where you are taking us through the journey of someone who has problems. They don't know how to define them. Right. And that's what I saw in this, that you were just in a place where you were like, I don't feel good.
Right.
I don't know why. I need to find someone to help me figure it out. Like all you knew was I don't feel good. And so then you searched out sort of this community of people, and they were like, you don't feel good because people are toxic. And you were like, holy cow, how did I find you? You're right. And that is, from my experience, one of the things about being in those situations, that you don't realize what it is that's bringing you down, right? It can't be them. They tell me all the time that they're great. They tell me all the time that it's me and my problem, and that I shouldn't be upset about their shitty behavior. And that worms its way into your head. So I think a question for us in the crew is, what part of this can we say turn it into what's a good 5-minute section of this where we can keep it in a thing? But for you, having written this out, I would say this entire journey is worth chronicling and figuring out what is the audience for it and how you get it to them. Noah, nod at me if you want in. Yes. Okay.
So thank you so much for sharing this story. It's really nice seeing someone talk about looking for help. I think that's a super difficult thing for people to do. I know, especially for dudes, it's hard to admit when we need help and then talk about what we do to find what we need. So I thought that was, that really spoke to me. When I was listening, for me, there seem to be two things going on. So there's sort of this abstract realization that you're talking about, and then it also figures into your personal journey. And a lot of times I was just kind of thinking, like, could more of your story be added here to sort of make the point that you're explaining at a high abstract level? And so maybe that is worth thinking about. And then the other question I had is, you seemed very careful sort of not to levy criticism against these people, although I think I sensed some ambivalence toward what they were, sort of what they were preaching, I guess. So I was just wondering, like, what is your feeling about these people now that you've sort of grown beyond their message? I think I leave it open-ended like that.
Okay. I think, what is my feeling? Well, growing beyond them, I guess I feel badly I feel bad that they're stuck and they don't know it. Or maybe they're intentionally keeping people stuck so they can keep selling content. Because I don't know these people personally, right?
Right.
So there's
that's something that I a little bit wonder about. And also, I wonder if it helps get people into the process, right? Because I think that there is a point in time where you got to let people be bitter. You got to let people like have that for whatever amount of time it is, a month or a year or whatever. It's not like you can tell someone you got to just be zen about it and let it go. And then they're just like, oh, you're right. Now I can do it. It's like there is something cathartic spending a little time being like, oh, they're jerks. Oh, sometimes you've got to, it's just the nature of the thing. And I think that relates a lot to the writing process. And I don't know if I was going to hit it in my lesson, but sometimes you can do research, you can plot out and think about your stories forever and ever. But if you're not writing it down, you're always going to make the mistakes first. And it's an iterative process. You get better through the doing. You can't plan and have it come out the first time perfect. There's a woodworking saying, measure twice and cut once. But just the nature of a lot of this sort of stuff, whether it's healing emotionally or writing, planning's great. But a lot of times the thing you got to do is make 3, 4, 5 cuts before you figure out how you can measure twice to cut once. And that's just the process. Some little things that I'm going to hit you with, just thoughts. And this was because it's a rough draft, but what do people think about titling their work? Usually, if you're doing a short story and you're performing it live, people don't say, this is the title of the piece. And I kind of liked it. Does anybody have any strong thoughts one way or the other? I think you were nodding, and so I threw you up. No. So I'm gonna flip over and say one of the things is it makes the audience feel like it's a written work. It probably pushes them away a little bit, but a title gives you a lot of context. And because this is essayistic, I felt like it worked. If it turns in more story, maybe it's something that you have, but you only use in the written page thing. Another difficult thing is we visually want scenes. And because all of this is happening on YouTube and on a screen, and it's about you consuming media, it becomes really difficult to imagine it. Like basically this entire story, you're sitting at a computer and you're watching it. And so we're watching you watch this stuff and have these deep thoughts. And the deep thoughts are very interesting, but it's hard to stay focused for 10 minutes without you painting a scene for us and getting that movie thing. So that hits back to a little bit what Noah was going into, in that, one, you can give us, this is going off of his, but you could give us some of what you're mad about, right? There's scenes there of these cluster B people actually doing stuff. You can do the showing, and it doesn't have to be a lot. And there's some way to hold that with empathy and say, they've got, emotional and mental issues, that this comes from a place. They have things that happened in their path. There's a way to not be bitter about it. Hopefully, I think it's difficult, but also acknowledge this behavior wasn't good for me, and to show it truthfully. these are the things that happened, and revealing that sort of moment might give us those stakes and help us see that you're not, if we see that you're bitter at the beginning of this journey, and that you have, that's sort of the arc that I saw, but I didn't get it till the end, and you gave us that ending of don't be bitter. But tell me how this feels to you. So in the beginning, like, my 3-act structure would be you hurt, bitter, and you kind of don't know why. And then you find healers, and you're making sort of slow progress. And then you have an epiphany where you realize, the one thing I don't like about these healers is that they seem bitter. And then you were like, and then once you see it in them, you can find it in yourself and exile it, right? You learn from their mistakes. And that is the resolution to that conflict that we saw in the beginning. And so you've started in this one place and gotten out the other side. Does that feel accurate?
Yes. I mean, I guess. I mean, I really didn't. I think when I was seeking out these healers, I was already in therapy and already healed pretty far.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, actually, no. I'm trying to think. Where did I start the story at? I guess I kind of started it like because I found some of these YouTube people helped me realize that these people exist, right? So I was in a place of naivete, I guess, trying to just see what's out there in the world. Why am I hurting? Who are these people? Why do I feel I'm in so much pain? Probably because those people were hurting me. I didn't know that my feeling as a naive person thinks that nobody's out to hurt anyone. That was my view of the world before, my naive view. Like, everyone's like me. They're all out to help. They're all out to care. No one's really, really trying to hurt anybody. But then, as I experienced some bad behaviors, like you said, then I was like, well, what's going on with these behaviors? So I investigated by looking on YouTube of what's going on. Because I know I'm a psychology major too. So I did brush briefly on these disorders. But, if you don't live and experience them, they don't mean anything to you. It's like you're reading a story that doesn't apply. So plus I can't even fathom what it would be like to hurt people like that intentionally. I don't do it. I hurt people very unintentionally. So it was very hard for me to understand they exist. So was I bitter? I was just confused, really, like, because I was unaware. And then when I sought out these healers, they made me aware, first of all, of what these people do, who they are, all the information. And then they helped me figure out who they were, but then I saw they were kind of stuck themselves. So here I thought these healers are going to be my end all be all. They're going to be the answer. I was going to get the answer from these healers, and then I'll be done and complete, and I can move on in my life. Then I realized that we're all kind of involved in this collective together, and the society. I guess I kind of want to bring a point in. I can't really bridge it together yet, maybe, because it's so far away from where I started to where I ended. Because where I'm not even done. I just have this. I just see that I'm like,
it's a process forever.
I discovered that these people are just part of our culture. We're all part of a collective, and we all tend to think the same way. That we all kind of, if we're not thinking in a way of forgiveness and love-based stuff, which our culture is very fear-based. So I guess I'm realizing now where I am right now is I realize that we're a collective. A lot of us are living in fear, and that's really doesn't really relate. I guess that's where the message what I really learned from the journey was starting off not knowing people hurt, then instead of blaming these people, like you said, I don't want to blame them anymore. I have forgiven them. I let them back into my life with a new sense of forgiveness, where then I'm also with an awareness as well. So I have a forgiveness and an awareness. And then the more aware I become of myself, the more aware I become of the collective. So I guess that's kind of where I was trying to go, but I guess I'm kind of all over the place because I wasn't really sure how to paint it. That's why it took me so long today. I was trying to figure out, what am I trying to paint here? I want the message to be there, but how do I get from there to there? I didn't give any story. It's supposed to be a story. Right, so I guess we had to focus on a specific story with maybe one person, and maybe just kind of tell about that story. And I don't know, I got to figure that out. I got to sit down and go, what do I want to say? Like you said, the whole 3 X's thing. So I was hurt and bitter. I was really more so confused and naive. That'd be my first thing. Then I sought out and learned, and then I learned even the people who are healing aren't really healed, because if we don't heal together as a whole, we can't really heal. That's what I want. That would be.
Oh yeah, I like that. That clarity helps me understand the story better, for sure. I think for the second telling, though, what we're gonna try to do is maybe do some short scenes to ask you to do.
Okay.
And we're just gonna like play around with it, and we might stop you and interrupt you and be like, okay, try this. Okay, try this. Would you be up for that?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So what I think I'm gonna the three things, and we might just do them that we're gonna look at, that I'm thinking about here, and I'll take suggestions from anybody if they have thoughts on this, is I think because these YouTubers are so, public, they're telling their stories. I think it's fine for us to talk about them. If you could tell the story of one of them being bitter, like what happened to them in a cluster B situation and that they're bitter about, like what is the story that they went through, and just like in a short snippet, and let's see what one of those stories is.
Okay.
And then one story of what is a scene, and this isn't for an answer right now, but I'll do a lesson and give you some time to think about this. But what's one scene, like, could you paint that ending scene in a picture? Like, where were you when you had the epiphany? Or could you like paint, what did it feel like? Were you walking around? Who was the first person you called and told? Did it resonate with the first person you told? I'm just sort of throwing things out there. Does this make sense, though?
Yeah.
What I'm asking? Okay. So those are the two ideas that I want you to ruminate on while I do a little talk about character. And then we'll come back and see how that goes. Bam. And I'm gonna throw out Head Harpy. Thank you for joining us. And then there's a Silly Gnome 2222225. That's probably too many twos. Welcome, and thank you for hanging out with us. Also, who did it? There was one more. There's a Pi Smyers. It was Pi Day recently, so hi to Pi Smyers. If I mispronounce that, you can correct me, and I will attempt to do it more correctly later. So last week we talked about Neil Gaiman, and we talked about his masterclass, which we're writing about at storyluck.org. TJ's internet is messed up. / Let me throw org, and hopefully that's clickable for everybody. But if you go there, we're writing articles every week about these master classes, and you can sort of see some of our thoughts in real time. Neil Gaiman, character dialogue, and also Judy Blume is what we're talking about today. And we talked about how they're sort of seat of your pants writers. They're right to find out people, which is in contrast to plotters or people who write skeletons. It's in contrast to, let me sneak down a little bit, to that sort of thing. So planning it out ahead of time. And what they do is they work on just coming up with the characters, setting their characters into conflict, and moving the story forward that way. And it gives them this joy to find these surprises. And so I said I'd talk today a little bit about what they had to say in terms of character and dialogue. And I'm going to start it out a little out of order because I think it makes more sense if I move it. Gaiman attributed this to Jack Kirby, though he wasn't sure if that's who he got it from, but it was that he believed in this funny hats theory. And one of the things to think about and how this applies to oral storytelling, which is normally our focus, is that it's really hard to keep characters in our head, especially if they're just names. If I give you a list of 10 names, you're not going to be able to remember them. Basically, in a story, 3 is the magic number. After that, it becomes really hard for us to keep those characters. A thing that you can do to make it easier is to give them a trait. Whether it's red hair or a frilly scarf or, he says funny hat, right? And it's not always a funny hat, but you give them something to indicate that it's them. Judy Blume in hers points out that if you overdo this, it becomes silly. She had a character who always licked her lips. And then in the second draft, she's like, I can't just be like, and she licked her lips. And then she licked her lips again. She's like, that didn't work. But especially with clothing, you can bring it about. And one of the things about this is it coincides with how masters of memory do memory palaces. You place information inside of an object. You have, for those who are unfamiliar, you build a room in your mind, and the room is filled with stuff, and then you say the stuff represents things that you're trying to remember. So a lot of times they'll have filing cabinets, and they put the information in the filing cabinet. But you can add the information to anything. This glass snow globe holds this memory. And it's just a trick that works for you. And one of the things, and you can have this, you can sort of have this help your audience by using the same trick. Matt with the fiery red hair. And every time you mention Matt, you mention his fiery red hair. And then all of a sudden, our memories from the story are attached to that image. So we can fill out and remember all the things that you told us about him because they're attached to an image. It is hard to attach it to the word Matt because Matt is a blank image. So a lot of writing is about helping your reader remember the things, hand-holding them through your story. So a lot of characterization is about that. And then the next thing about characterization that I wanted to talk about is an idea of empathy, which super coincides with a lot of what Danette was talking about. And just having empathy for people is better for you. It is hard to write compelling villains if you don't have empathy for them. And in our personal narrative stories, we're often the protagonist. We're often the hero. But if we paint these other people and these situations that arise that we conquer without any empathy, it becomes super tough. For the reader to get into it, they don't seem real. Doug Lippman, in his book, The Storytelling Coach, talks about how this was a big problem with him when he was doing folk tales and other stories, and he couldn't figure out why people weren't connecting to these stories where he had intense and interesting villains, until one day he was working with someone who asked, is there anything about this villain that reminds you of yourself? Is there anything about this villain that you can relate to? And then it sort of dawned on him that he was actually trying to, because the guy was so bad, he was trying to put a barrier between him and that stuff. He wouldn't show the relatability part. And as soon as he could tap into that, all of a sudden people could connect to that character. And both Judy Blume and Neil Gaiman talk about that sort of concept. These characters, there's a piece of them in you. There is a way for you to figure out what you would be like in their shoes. What's about them that relates to your story, and how do you get that in there? And once you get into that headspace, you can, and it can be a hard thing to do, it can be a scary thing to do, to like sort of look at that inside yourself. But once you do it, it becomes way easier for you to tell from their perspective. And when you have those, even if they're just close third person scenes, the reader is going to pick up that you have empathy for them. Aaron Sorkin talks about that when he talks about the scene in A Few Good Men where the guy's giving the speech. Of course, I called the code red. And he said, to be able to write that scene, I had to shut my brain off and be in that space and believe him. And I had to say it and write it as though I had the same level of conviction and write the best argument that I could muster for that. And there are people who watch that scene and are convinced because, you know, Jack Nicholson is very compelling to watch and say those things. Of course, I stand on that wall, blah, blah, blah. For those who don't know it, you can look it up after this. This doesn't just go for villain characters, but it can be harder for them. All of your characters, especially when you're on a stage and talking, we promote this embodied storyteller. Every time you're telling from their perspective, you're doing this dialogue, you go in and out of these characters. And when you're in them, you've got to understand what your connection is to them. And that empathy for the position they're in, that understanding of their biases, and like giving them that benefit of the doubt, you can, you know, the audience is going to be able to go there with you on those. All right. So it doesn't just come through dialogue. This empathy allows you to get their voice. And one of the things about their voice that Judy Blume talked about, not explicitly, but like, it was sort of like she didn't even realize she was saying it. But one of the things she talked about is because she writes for children primarily, when she's writing those books, she, as a narrator, goes into that space of being a child writing for children. What would I do? And then when she flips to being the narrator to these various characters, she gives them empathy by deciding on the framing of where it's going based on who she's writing for, so that the visual camera comes from these multiple perspectives. Even when she's third person omniscient, she won't always stay with the protagonist and color people. She'll go over to these other people. to show it from their point of view, so you could get a sense of them and their specific voices. When their voice is in control, she gives them control of that writerly narrator camera to give them more empathy going forward. This allows you to know the reasons of their actions. It helps the audience sympathize with them. It helps you sympathize with them and articulate those actions so that they make sense. If you have a villain or a character who you don't agree with and kind of don't like, and you can't see yourself in them, it becomes really difficult for you to write them so that it's compelling. There's a writer, Brandon Sanderson, who is religious, and in one of his talks, he said, I like a lot of atheist books, but I just wish that when they portray religious people, they weren't so absurd. You know, they're always making these straw man arguments, and like, there's better arguments to be made. You might not agree with them, but I wish they would write these characters so that I could relate. Even if you don't agree with them, then I could relate. I never see religious characters in works where they're written in a way where I'm like, that's exactly what I would say in this situation. And I think for other things, we all connect to that, where we read characters who are, into video games or anime or whatever, and then the author's not, and you're just like, they're just making fun of me, or they don't understand me. The way you get as an author to that space of understanding is, one of the things is, if you're bitter about it, like Danette said, you give that bitterness up and you see the part of you that can connect to them. And it just makes for more compelling writing. And I think that is... Oh, okay. There's one last thing that I'm going to do in my 30 seconds. And it's to say, Judy Blume talked about dialogue a lot, and she has a lot of good things in her speech about it. But one of the things she said is bad dialogue is very writerly, and I can't get into it if people talk like writers and they don't interrupt each other and they don't stutter and it just doesn't sound like human people. I know that some people like that, but I don't. I'll put a book down immediately. And Neil Gaiman had sort of a rejoinder in his about that. And it's that when you're writing dialogue, you can't have the ums and the ers and the ands and the bada booms that I'm doing when I teach this class spontaneously, right? That would also be boring. You have to create a cadence that is cohesive to the whole of the work, that the characters stay in that same dialogue. And you have to create sort of a simulacrum of the real. They cut each other off. There are things that happen. They make mistakes, but it can't be as intense as it would be if you were just recording a conversation outside, because that would be boring. So it's a balancing act where you find that level of writerly where it feels real, even though it isn't. And that applies to a lot of storytelling. And that was way over 30 seconds. And so we're switching back over to Danette.
Okay,
how are you feeling about thinking about possibly those two scenes that we talked about looking at and doing a snippet of?
Okay, so the two scenes are again
yeah.
short scenes okay, because one of them do a display of how one of them are bitter. And then you also do a scene where I can paint the ending scene in a picture, right? Is that what you wanted me to do, those two things?
Yeah. Did either of those feel like you've got a handle and you could try it?
I feel like maybe I could give. I guess the story has to totally change for it to, because it's too much content.
No, this is what all I want is this doesn't have to, this isn't going to be in a story or anything. You're not going to fit this in there.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So I'm just acting out something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want you to, and it can be as extemporaneous as ever. I just want you to tell the story of something that happened to one of the internet gurus. Like, what's one of the things they're bitter about? And what's the story? Like, this person did this, they cut them out of their life. They're bitter about it now. And that's it. And it's just like real quick, like 2 minutes.
Okay. So I want to kind of cut to the person that the story I was trying to make the story about really was the last person I spoke about. She's the one that had the realization during experiencing her work because of all the other people in the background or the back story. The story was this. I was online. I'd taken a long time break from internet healing or YouTube healing. And I was giving it another chance. So then I come upon this character. So here I come upon this character, and she calls herself the crappy childhood fairy. Which is a really interesting. And basically her emphasis was on trauma and healing as a child, and her focus more on the healing is about your past wounds. And so I was more interested in that because it really is where it all stems from, the root. So when I was reading her stuff, she told her story. Her story was, she wasn't with a narcissist or psychopath. She was with an alcoholic. And so it was different. And so it kind of intrigued me because she too, though, was holding this sort of resentment. So how would I explain it? So I went on and she had a video that was out there. And in this video, she started talking about her story. Her story was, she said she came from a family of alcoholics. So I don't know her. See, I can't paint the character right now. I need a picture of who she is to me. So I guess that would be like, I'd have to work on sort of.
Yeah. So she came from a family of alcoholics. What do you remember about the alcoholics? And you can sort of riff on it. It doesn't have to be true.
Well,
like, was it her mom and dad who were alcoholics?
Both her parents were alcoholics. So she ended up.
Did she have brothers and sisters who drank?
She didn't say. I think her main focus, what I really remember her talking about is her experiences with dating alcoholics, and one of them died. And she was.
Oh, that is great.
She came into this place where she's like, I trusted him. You know, I was in his world with him. I was helping him. I was enabling him. I was keeping him around. I felt that because there's a power in enabling, she said. There's a power you feel because you feel like you're doing something good. And that you only do things when you're feeling rewarded, she said. And so when you get a reward from it, or you feel like there's some sort of reward. So then she goes on and says, well, one of them, she didn't go into specifics. It's a problem. She didn't describe people. They don't really, this is more like the stuff I've been watching. These YouTubers are really describing what we need to do and how we need to frame it, and not necessarily a personal story. The only one that did a personal story was a whole book about her personal story was this one YouTuber who I think is the most bitter, actually.
Sure.
But I didn't write about her because, again, I don't know her character. I have to revisit her because I haven't seen her in like a year. So I haven't read her book in a year. So I'd have to have done that research to really paint this character, right? To know.
Right. But it's just, it's just an exercise. Let's try one or two more shots at this one.
Okay, let's try something new.
Because I think that there's something here with the, with this alcoholism. Excuse me. Yeah, what is that story? So the story so you know, she grew up with alcoholics. Her mom was an alcoholic, her dad was an alcoholic, and so she learned the nurturing from that, and she had to take care of these people. And when she got older, she was drawn to people that she needed to take care of. Now, did she become an alcoholic herself?
No.
No. Yeah. So there was a safety that she learned about herself. Do you know anything? Can you remember anything about one of the people that she dated? Oh yeah, you said that the one died.
Yeah, he was a heroin addict, I guess, beyond alcoholic. He was a
Yeah.
drug addict. So she was with an alcoholic, and then she was with a drug addict who ended up killing himself with heroin overdose, I think, from what I recall.
Do you remember where she found that person?
She didn't say. She just said that she was more focused on her. What she was focusing on, this is why she stood out to me, when she was talking about these people, she was talking about how she's made a promise to herself to never date addicts again. That was the biggest mistake of her life, and that she won't even look at someone if they said they were an addict. She won't even if they're a recovered addict or not. She wants nothing to do with addicts anymore ever.
Yeah.
So that does not turn me off from her, because she was going. It made me feel like she was condemning these addicts and saying, because she had such a bad experience with them, that she's like, no, keep them out. And that turned me off. That's what made me feel like, why is she put this content like so like saying to people that's just her personal choice, and she has a bias towards this. And I think we're all addicted to something. I mean, and I think, and I found it off on that tangent. And I know I have issues with alcohol, right? Like I don't drink anymore because I can't, because I just medicate with it. It's more of a try to rush to a high. I'm not doing it for fun, for leisure, for social. I'm lying. I would lie to myself. I was really just on the empty stuff.
But let's focus on trying to figure out how to say,
so how do I
paint this picture, because you can turn this into a story.
Yeah.
Right. That it is a story, and how do you, and that's great. So, because this is sort of your epiphany moment, where this woman is saying, I can't deal with it. And one of the things that comes to my mind, and I don't know this person, I only know from the story you're telling, and I'm armchair psychologizing a lot here. So but in that sense, one of the things is she's going from this place of there's a need for familiarity and control in dating someone who's an addict. I know how to take care of an addict. And you brought up the thing about like, there's something that feels good about it. You feel superior.
Right.
You don't have this problem. And really in her response, she maintains that a little bit. Well, I found out I couldn't control. I thought I knew how to handle an addict. I dated all these addicts and they proved me wrong. I don't know how to handle it. And so I'm going to take that control back and that superiority back by saying never again and being bitter about it. That's all on you. And it has nothing to do with me and my needs for control and feeling good about myself.
Right.
And the story is that she had this trauma. So I'm talking too much. Let's try. Does that give you anything to go?
It kind of makes me feel like, yeah, I mean, her character is someone, like you said, painting the picture of a little bit of a bitterness, but because of her sense of losing control and doesn't want to lose control again, which I think trauma stems from. Trauma in itself is you don't have control and you feel powerless, right? Of the situation. It takes you. So I think she's all about trauma, and like she's not a therapist or anything. She's just someone who's experienced it.
Just try to tell the story real quickly of that. Just so let me tell you about this woman. She had, tell us that she had parents who were alcoholics, and give us just a picture of what that was like to grow up with alcoholics, and give her a picture of finding and dating a heroin addict.
Okay. So there's this woman online. She calls herself the crappy childhood Barry. And basically, she is somebody who is counseling people on YouTube about trauma and codependency and healing from codependency. And also, she had experience with lots of addicts who codependents typically hook up with addicts because they get some sort of sense of power or control, I guess power in helping, the feeling of they're doing something good, rewarding themselves with the feeling I'm helping, but really they're hindering because they're afraid. So I don't know. She's a woman. She had 2 alcoholic parents, and she appears to be like somebody who is very much in her head about life. Way she talks and speaks of everything. She seems like when she talks about her parents very vaguely, just enough for us to leave us guessing. So if I had to depict this woman as her character, I would say she probably experienced some real neglect. She probably came home one day and, found one of her parents in a troubling situation, probably passed out on the couch with a bottle of vodka, maybe a cigarette burning in the ashtray with no one around. And she felt like she had, at that moment, she saw her parents could not care for themselves. She put that cigarette butt out and she vowed that she will be now their new caregiver. And so then she walked through this feeling her whole life, just being the caregiver, being the responsible one, being the one that cares. And she, took that into her adult life. Not knowingly, she all of a sudden started meeting and attracting the same people she was taking care of. The familiarity of her childhood suffering was always being presented in every person she'd meet. And when she met someone who reminded her of her past, then she for sure was going to give that person a chance. Because then she can again, do what she does best, take control of the situation. So she met John at a bar. She doesn't drink, but John did. This is her first boyfriend. He was kind of scruffy, scraggly. He had this beard that wasn't filled in all the way. He kind of reminded her of maybe like if she had a brother, if she doesn't, how her brother would look. Kind of fun. He was but also kind of reserved, and also had this deep aura about him, something that seemed familiar. And she wished she would have she wished she could have knew him better. He tried to paint the picture for her that he was fine. He doesn't drink that much, or he hid his drinking from her. So she met him at a bar. They had this thing. She'd always go home. So she would hear like the beer can popping, but never see the beer can. And so she was always wondering, like, I feel something's wrong. His behavior is wrong. It's off. I feel like I'm taking care of him, but I can smell the alcohol. But where is it? He's only saying he had a couple of beers or one drink or that, but he smells like a complete brewery to me. And now he's starting to detach. Now he's starting to make excuses. Now he's starting to stay out late and not come home. Now he's starting to fail.
Yeah. Boom.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah. That was perfect. But you can see completely, we weren't doing it to get to a finished piece of the puzzle, but right. That is super compelling. Okay. And you don't need it to be long or whatever, but I think some of that, you need 1 or 2 of those where you're really doing a story inside this essay, so that that's going to be stuff that we take away from the essay. The logic stuff, it's going to bolster whatever the story is that you put in there. And your initial reaction to that was to get you in there and say how you were thinking about it, and that was really good. Especially as you went on, the images became clearer and clearer, and I think whether this is a route you go with or not, you did a great job.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to explore here, because I'm a very, very, very beginner storyteller. Like I just write jokes. I'm a comedian.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna. I like your storytelling, and I find, and it's one of the things about it is that your jokes are very narrative based, and you tell stories about your life. I feel like I know a lot about you because of the way you tell jokes, and you do stories about your life and like dealing with your kids. And
I didn't realize. I only thought this a lot because I just overthought it. So, but I'm glad that I got this experience. Thank you for see I could put some of that in there, how I like to frame stories, how I like to build characters in my work, right? But I know the characters in my life. So I guess if I
think that's something else.
Yeah.
And we're gonna pop over to Susan. Is Susan muted? She is.
Okay. You ready for my story?
Yes.
Okay. So here's my story. My 24-year-old autism spectrum, 208-pound son, Michael Mallard, is abusive, both verbally and physically. On February 1st, 2021, he hit me while I was driving him to Walmart, twice in the face. First, when I said, "Since you are wearing my socks, I guess you need socks too, so pick up a bag of socks while you're at Walmart buying jeans." That was the first hit. I stopped the car and said, "Get out." Then I got the second hit. That was the one that landed. That one gave me a split lip and a bloody nose and a black eye. Blood started pouring out of me and I started screaming. He looked at me. I was not sure if he was going to hit me again or get out of the car. Luckily for me, he got out of the car. But he still lives with me, and it is now March 31st, 2021. You asked me, why do I let my 24-year-old mentally ill, abusive son live with me? Is it good for me or him? Probably not. But finding a place for him to live and keeping a roof over my head is not so easy in the Mundelein, Vernon Hills, Libertyville area in Lake County, Illinois. I started looking for affordable housing in the area for him, and I got a list of what was available in the area. There was only one place open to people aged less than 55, and that was in Zion, Illinois, an hour from Mundelein, where Michael works. But I called them to ask about availability. It has been 2 weeks, and they have not called me back. I am torn about where Michael can live. Right now, Michael works part-time at Jimmy John's, and he rents from me for $620 a month. So he needs to find a place that will be all-inclusive and only charge $620 a month near his work, and then I would have to find another renter because I cannot make the mortgage payment without his rent. It is a hard place to be, wanting not to be abused, but also wanting to make the mortgage payment, but also not wanting to live with strangers. Seems living in the Mundelein, Libertyville, Vernon Hills area is not as easy for anyone who cannot afford $1,800 a month rent or mortgage payment. And while I work 3 jobs and have an MBA and CPA, I still make less than I did in 2002. Some of us just never recovered from the crash of 2008, and I am one of them. It is a hard place to be. That is why I told my story today on a Zoom meeting with Lake County United. Lake County United is trying to work with the Lake County, who owns the land in Libertyville, and the Behavioral Health Hospital, who owns land in Waukegan, to buy their land so they can facilitate building sustainable, affordable housing. It is a hard sell to change the myth that having affordable, sustainable housing near you, $500,000 home will not drop your property values. It would be extremely helpful for Michael to be able to afford sustainable and affordable housing. The mayor of Waukegan and the state representative came to the Zoom meeting of over 275 people. I'm not sure if they were giving lip service on helping Lake County United, or if they really mean that they would support the initiative. Lake County United is trying to do a 3-prong approach, getting the community, the public sector, and the private sector invested in making more affordable housing happen in the area. It is a hard sell, and finding the grants or financing to obtain the property may be an even harder sell. I'm hoping to do my small part to make this initiative happen. Lake County United made it happen for a mixed community of apartments in Mundelein with the current mayor's help, and hopefully they can make it happen again in Libertyville and Waukegan. It is a lot of work, but I think it is the just thing to do, and I hope that other people in the public and private sector can see that.
All right. That's a tough story. That's a tough story. How do you feel after reading it?
I feel good.
All right. Good. That is good to hear. Lots of love coming at you in the chat. And just straight off the bat, sorry that you have gone through that experience. Obviously, you and I have talked about it before, but it's a tough thing, and it's a big bummer of a situation all around. Storytelling wise, what do people think? This is another one that was very essay-esque. We talked about this off camera, but you already did this sort of for somebody. Is that correct, Susan?
Yeah, I told this story at Lake County United, the Zoom meeting with the 275 people.
Do you think that there's another chance where they'll have another meeting to do this again?
I don't think so much that my story will be at another meeting, but I have signed up to help. So I may more have to tell my story to an individual mayor or to somebody like in the public sector. I think more in the public sector than the private sector to hear this story, for them to understand exactly, the need in the area. I wasn't the only one. There was other people telling their stories. It's about 7 of us or so.
Yeah.
So I would guess that they'll tap us to, tell the story, because like the mayor of Waukegan, there was another story where the girl did get to go to college, but she had to come home and live with her parents to pay the mortgage for her parents' house. And the mayor of Waukegan, also had to do that. So like these stories can resonate with people who are in the public sector, who have been, through it, and maybe just kind of make them realize it's still happening and they need to, step up and help get affordable housing.
So yeah, Kay threw out a link. I'm gonna throw out another one here. We're gonna hang out in Discord after the show, and so if people have stuff they want to talk about affordable housing or trauma or being with toxic people, whether they're cluster B or otherwise, we're definitely up for hearing your stories and just riffing off of those things after the show. Yeah, I found this super powerful, and I think it's much improved off of yesterday. I'm gonna throw it to Noah.
Thank you for sharing the story, and I'm sorry, that's the situation you're going through. And it was kind of a curveball, so I feel like I have less to say because I was just trying to process the story a little bit. But I do think the scene in the car, and you pretty much lead off with it, it has a huge emotional impact. And we talk about it a lot on the show. You want to start as close to the action as you can. And you did a really good job with that. And, this story you shared for a purpose, right? You're trying to advocate for affordable housing options. And I guess we're a little bit on a theme tonight about, asking for help and taking action to find that help as well. So I saw a parallel there as well. And I wonder, obviously it's a difficult thing, and there's an element of powerlessness to the story, but have you found it empowering to share it? And is that another goal beyond just the need for affordable housing?
Hmm, I mean, I think mostly, you know, it's the affordable housing more than sharing the story to, that many people. Like I was asked um, to do my story at the United. Um, basically, I I was asked not because they knew this specific story, but they knew that I had to have renters live with me to live in this area. Um, they didn't know about this specific story, but so, but it was mostly, to get affordable housing to hopefully, you know, open that up more because, you know, we basically, have made the area so that the people who actually work here can't live here. We're like the restaurant mecca where I live, and so there's all these people who can't live, right where they work, and it's not fair.
Yeah, so something to think about is that moment is so strong that Noah said it that even after us talking about it for 5 or 10 minutes, he's still like, I'm processing. That's an intense thing to hear, to have, a family member, especially a child, enact violence against you in a way that's like super real. So know that when you tell that, it's hard on the audience to hear, and there might be something that because you're attaching it to this further thing, there might be something for you to do to help pull us out of that. One thing is to take a breath and give some time between you showing us that scene and moving on. Another thing that lets the air out is to acknowledge it and say, hey, I said something really tough. And if that's making you feel uncomfortable, that's a normal response. Let them, again, sometimes it feels sort of infantilizing or whatever, but your audience wants to know that you're okay, or that you're going to be okay, and they want to know what the proper response is for them. What are you looking for from them in this moment? And for you, it's I want help with the affordable housing thing. Yeah. So there's a little thought. What else? Kay, do you? Yeah, throwing over to you.
Susan, thank you. I feel like each week your storytelling blooms and blossoms for me. Either you have an intensity of emotion when you're delivering your story, or the clarity and the logical procession of the story comes through. This week for me, the clarity and the logical procession came through more than the emotion. And maybe that was what was needed for you to tell a story that feels personal for me. I don't know how you're processing the content for yourself right now. But thank you for sharing. And I feel a lot right now, and I feel like I am blessed to be here in the space with you telling the story. I appreciate again that there's an arc here. We had two stories that were very difficult but I felt like I got something out of each story. I felt like with that story, or I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, Danette.
No, that's gonna. You're fine. It's fine.
Okay, I felt like she had a conflict that she could feel these turbulent emotions from folks. And when it got to the point of toxicity, she knew she needed to make a change and figure out how to balance being in community with people who might hurt you sometimes, but not shutting them out and also not exposing herself to unmitigated harm. And then you come with your story, which feels intensely personal to me again. And it feels like it could be a transformative story. The point of telling the story is because you want to see a change happen in a larger, broader scope. So again, there's that helps carry me through the fact that it's a tough story. So kudos to Donette and kudos to you, Susan. I think that you brought the logical linear details of the story. You made me understand as a storyteller why I mean, as a listener to your storytelling, why I'm here. And as tough as it might be to say this, yes, I do want to know that you're okay. I want to know that you're okay. Giving us some of that emotion that you might have been feeling with this story, it would just enhance the story. Now, if giving us the emotion would make it impossible to tell the story, I also understand that. So I'm throwing that out as my one critiquing note, but I
Yeah.
felt like I got something from it. So thank you.
Yeah. How I concur with that. How do you feel about it, about that note?
I
Could you read it more emotionally?
mean, I could, but I'm also getting notes from Twitch TV about just reading it like I did, that they couldn't get past it to listen to affordable housing. So,
Right. Which is
yeah,
which
yeah.
but that's why okay, so we're saying both the things, right? You read it with more emotion, but then you gotta take us out. You gotta do both.
Yeah, but you're telling me to tell you guys that I'm okay. I'm not okay.
All right. Well,
So I'm not going to tell you I'm okay.
good.
I have, a 24-year-old who's 208 pounds who lives in my house who, hit me on February 1st. On March 10th, he bumped his nose in the bedroom in the dark, so he smashed the ceramic light plate. And I woke up the next morning and I'm like, what's this about? Like, oh, I bumped my nose, so I had to destroy something. No, we're not okay.
Yeah.
Right? We're not okay. So I'm not going to tell you I'm okay.
Sure. Well, then
I may be dead. You don't know that.
right.
Like, I don't know that. So,
this is a place
this fear-based stuff is true. Like,
yeah. But Susan, so one of the notes here is that this is this is a place for rough drafts and to work on these things and have these discussions and stuff like that. But in this sense of like, we're crafting things for storytelling, if you're not in a place where you can take care of the audience, that's a sign that the piece isn't ready.
I could take a breath, but I'm not going to lie to them.
Right.
I'm not going to say I'm okay when I'm not okay.
No, nobody is asking you to lie.
So I'll take a breath.
But
I don't know that being more emotional is going to help my audience either, because they're having trouble as it is.
What I'm saying is, this this is a tough piece, and you are, it is putting something on other people, right? And so it might not be this is an important thing to talk about, but when you talk about it in this sense.
Dan, if I can share
Yeah.
for a second. So, Susan, thank you again. I've had some experiences that I think are akin to what Danette spoke about and what you just spoke about. And we've done this before in the show where we said you don't have to retell your story. Sometimes we don't know until we share it again that a story is going to just take everything that we have to tell it. It's not always appropriate for the storyteller to get the feedback and to retool it on the spot. And that is absolutely okay. And I want to say thank you again for sharing it. I think we've got a lot to work with and process as we go into Discord. And it's, again, we had a storyteller a few weeks ago. She told a story that was very gripping for all of us, including her. And we just realized that sometimes, even though she told the story to an audience before, it hit her a different way when she told us. And that is okay. And thank you so much for sharing something so raw. And maybe now isn't the time to retool it. And this is like important for our audiences as well. This is like a lesson in process that storytelling is about being a human being. You're okay to not be okay. We're not okay sometimes. That's all right. And it's not all about entertaining folks. Sometimes it's about telling your truth and you just leave it right there.
Yeah. But are you feeling like, so with that note, are you feeling like you want to tell it a second time, Susan?
I mean, I can tell it a second time, but I can tell it with more emotion. It's just, I was just telling you what your Twitch TV people were saying.
Yeah, I mean, we are all in the chat and reading it and highlighting it and throwing it up. So, and all three of us, everybody in here said the same thing, right? It was tough to hear the rest of the story because the first image is so graphic. Everybody is saying that. And so I think we're going, as we're entering the home stretch, if you're comfortable with this, I think we're going to go to the third storyteller. Because I feel like we haven't really been able to give you much constructive criticism to work with. Okay. Well, I'm leaving it. Do you feel like you're ready? You want to give it another try?
I mean, so far what you've told me is to be more emotional at the beginning and take a breath. I can do that. I can do that.
All right. But what we're saying, okay, I know that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm asking is, are you going to be offended if
you've got 10 minutes and you need to do another story? No, go do another story.
All right. That's what I'm checking. So we're also in a bit of a lurch. For some reason, TJ can't get back into the stream here, but he is on the thing. Mac got sick, and so we're gonna open it up. Who can take over to do the last story of the evening? And if nobody's feeling it, then I will take it. Dun 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 dun. Giving any second.
Yeah. How do you feel, Dan? Do you think I will flip a coin with you. I do not feel like I can do a good job, but I'm willing to try it.
Yeah, this is especially because there was just their nature of the essay format. And I thought TJ was taking over for Mac. Yeah, Flip. Give me 30 seconds to come up with what my version is going to be. Yeah, flip a coin with me, Noah. Did I take it all back? Do you have it? Can you throw it on? Can you tilt your camera?
No, my camera
is fixed.
It's 4 feet away from me.
Yeah.
But I can't lie, so I'm gonna flip it, and you can call it in the air.
Change the white balance. Okay.
Go.
Heads.
Wait, heads you win or heads?
Heads I win.
It's heads.
Which means that you have to go.
Okay. All right, I can do that. That's the clarification I needed.
Right. I think no matter which way it was, Noah, you were gonna have to go.
That's all right. Maybe we were both playing that game.
Yeah, Danny's better at it.
Okay. I think I'm gonna need like 1 minute though. So
yeah.
Just to gather myself.
All right. So then I'm gonna come back and say it out loud. Susan,
yeah.
I love you very much, and that was a powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing it, and thank you, Danette, for being here in this intense show.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, you can explain to everyone what I'm going to do and why.
Oh, that's great. I could do that. So what we do at the end of the show is super special, and you don't see storytelling shows or workshops do this very often. The last teller is somebody who hasn't told a story, and they're going to tell someone else's story as though they themselves have lived it. And it's just a trippy experience. It helps the person who originally told it feel very heard. And then also for you in the audience, it helps you see in real time a very concrete way of what it means for voice to happen. Yeah. Take it away, Noah.
All right. So I don't think of myself as an empath, but I am the kind of person who picks up the emotions and the moods of those around me. So I find myself, in a grocery store, and I just know that the cashier is having a bad day, and I will do everything in my power. I will say and act in such a way so that I can make their day just a little bit better. And I think because my personality is this way, that I attract people that need or even prey on people like me. I did not know this. This wasn't a revelation to me, but I think I have at times surrounded myself with people, according to the DSM, are sort of in this cluster B personality disorder constellation, that take advantage of people and sort of lack empathy. And although I really didn't realize this, I knew it was causing. I knew that I could feel the problems it caused in my life. Issues with addiction and looking for solace in places that maybe weren't good for me. And so in the process of trying to heal and come to terms with, my past and, work toward a future that would work for me, I reached out for help. I went to therapy, and I learned a lot of stuff there. But I also went to YouTube, and I engaged in a little YouTube therapy. And there were a lot of people on YouTube. There was a blonde hippie girl that I listened to, and she actually was the one that sort of clued me in about these cluster B personality types, and that was an enlightening realization for me, because it's easy to blame yourself and blame your problems on yourself, but it's also good to know if there are external factors. And I sort of went down this YouTube therapy rabbit hole, and I went through a succession of people, and I listened to their and watched their YouTubes, and I bought their books, and I watched their videos, and I think it did a lot for me. It helped me out. It gave me some clarity, and it gave me information that helped me along on my journey. But eventually, I just realized that there was a thread that was connecting all these personalities, and I don't know if this common thread was that they had not healed enough, or that, you know, perhaps it was now part of their sort of media personality. But I got the sense from each of them that they had not, even though they preached forgiveness, they had not in their personal life been able to let go and truly forgive the people that had harmed them. And the realization that I came to is that we are all sort of the product of the larger culture around us, and we are all sort of striving for those things that we are told are correct, even though we may not consciously realize it, and that this larger culture is a condemnation culture. We always want to condemn those who have wronged us and shut them out and punish them. But for myself, and I think for humanity at large, that's not going to be a solution that works. And in moving beyond that, I've moved to include the people back into my life. I'm careful to do that in a safe way for myself, but I don't think that the solution is to give up on them and exclude them forever.
You're muted, Dan.
I'm you and every row. Thank you so much, everyone. If you enjoyed this show and are one of those empaths and can feel my energy and the joy that it would bring me if you smash that like button, and you signed up for us, muchas gracias, and just thank you. Come hang out with us. Let me throw it one more time up into the Discord to talk and hang out. You know, we consider you friends, and just like we're all friends, thank you for taking care of us and helping us make better stories. And it is 8:00, and if I click a button, we're going to get a whole new funky graphic to pop up. Oh, there it is. Oh, wait. Can I get the... Oh, goodbye. Everybody say goodbye. We'll see you.
Bye.
If we don't see you in 5 minutes, we'll see you next week. Bum, bum, bum.